Today is Friday, July 26th. We'll tell you about Vice President Harris's stance on Israel and the story of one of the most notorious drug traffickers in Mexico's history who was just captured in the U.S. Also, the 2024 Paris Olympics are about to begin, what to expect from the opening ceremonies and elite competitions ahead. Plus, Southwest Airlines is changing its longstanding boarding policy. Video game performers are going on strike today. And a foul-mouthed parrot has won hearts all over the world. Those stories and even more news to know in today's episode. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Vice President Kamala Harris is giving her take on one of the most controversial issues for Americans and the world right now: the war in Gaza. She met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday in a private meeting, and so did President Biden earlier in the day. They both apparently pushed for a ceasefire, but the vice president notably took a tougher tone than the president. Lately, Biden has been encouraging a 6-week ceasefire in Gaza. In exchange, Hamas would have to release all women, sick, elderly, and wounded hostages. Harris went a step further. After her meeting with Netanyahu, she gave a televised statement to say it is time for this war to end. And she spoke about the humanitarian crisis that's now impacting nearly all of the 2 million Palestinians in Gaza. As she put it, quote, "We cannot allow ourselves to be numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent." Harris still emphasized that Israel has a right to defend itself, just that how it's done matters. While the Israeli Prime Minister was meeting with Biden and Harris, more protesters rallied nearby, chanting, "Arrest Netanyahu." The vice president condemned the protesters who have been violent in recent days or have used any rhetoric praising Hamas. Netanyahu has a meeting with former President Trump today. So far, Trump hasn't spoken specifically about ceasefire negotiations, but during a Fox News interview yesterday, he said Netanyahu needed to finish the war quickly since it was bad for publicity. To be continued. 2 men who have been leading one of the most dominant criminal organizations in Mexico were finally captured in Texas. One is the drug lord Ismael El Mayo Zambada. The other is Joaquin Guzman Lopez, whose father is the other infamous cartel leader, El Chapo. The U.S. Justice Department says they're behind one of the most violent and powerful drug trafficking groups in the world, known for pushing fentanyl, methamphetamine, and heroin into the U.S. And now both Zambada and Guzman Lopez are in custody in El Paso. You'll remember Guzman Lopez's father was already caught and sentenced to life in prison. But the DOJ says Zambada, who co-founded the Sinaloa cartel with El Chapo, has kept things running ever since, and he's never spent time in jail until now. His son has already been captured, though, and has admitted to passing along orders for murders and kidnappings. The younger Zambada has actually been cooperating with the U.S. government, helping them target members of the Sinaloa cartel and a rival cartel for years. Now, one retired DEA agent tells the Washington Post El Mayo could also end up giving U.S. authorities information on corrupt Mexican officials and the inner workings of the drug trafficking industry. To be continued. California officials are about to start dismantling thousands of homeless encampments around the state. This is the most sweeping response so far to a recent Supreme Court ruling that gave governments more authority to remove homeless people from the streets. U.S. government data shows California had 180,000 homeless people last year, more than any other state, and most of them slept outdoors. Well, this week, Governor Gavin Newsom called on state officials and local leaders to humanely remove their encampments, starting with those that are the biggest threats to health and safety. He also told state officials to work with local governments to house people and provide services. His executive order is expected to divide local leaders in California, especially Democrats. Some have already started clearing homeless camps, but others have criticized the decision, saying it opens the door to inhumane measures to solve a complex crisis. As for Republicans, many of them have been calling on Newsom to take this step for a while, so they now say it's about time. Either way, certain state agencies will have to enforce the change along with local governments. Some of those agencies are going to start taking action right away as well, while others say it'll take time to develop policies and plans. A California man has been arrested for starting what's now become the state's largest wildfire so far this season. It's burned through several buildings and forced thousands of people to evacuate. Authorities say the suspected arsonist pushed a burning car into a gully near Chico, California, about 90 miles north of Sacramento. And since then, nearly 200 square miles have burned. And the fire is still out of control as of this morning. Meanwhile, a historic Canadian mountain town has been devastated by wildfires this week. 25,000 people have had to evacuate from Jasper in Alberta. And up to half of all buildings in the town have now been destroyed. Jasper is known to tourists around the world for hiking, skiing, kayaking, and biking. Now, firefighters are flying in from all around the world, from Mexico to Australia to South Africa, to help with the Jasper fire and nearly 200 others now burning in Alberta. The 2024 Summer Olympics kick off today in Paris, starting with the opening ceremony. And it's expected to be perhaps the most ambitious ever. Almost 100 boats will take 10,500 athletes down the famous Seine River, which will also be a big star of the Olympic Games. In fact, most of the events will take place in or around the city's most iconic areas. French officials say venues are ready to host all kinds of sports, from fencing and taekwondo to basketball, gymnastics, track, and swimming. Plus, this year's newest sport, breakdancing. There's a huge security operation in place with up to 5,000 police, soldiers, and hired guards on patrol at any one time. The president of the International Olympic Committee spoke to athletes gathered in the Olympic Village this week, telling them that by peacefully living together and competing, they're sending a resounding message of peace to the world. The Olympics will run for the next couple of weeks until the closing ceremony on August 11th. We have more news for you still ahead, including a major change for Southwest Airlines' boarding process, another Hollywood strike, the movie breaking records right now, and more. But first, this episode is sponsored by Shopify. I launched this podcast and the business behind it nearly 7 years ago at this point, and I've learned that running a growing business means getting the insights you need where you are. So if you want to start a business or you're already years in like me, Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. Seriously, you can launch with it, and then no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take that business to the next level. No wonder Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify's the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. In fact, even as a customer, I often notice my favorite brands and companies using Shopify at checkout. And I so appreciate how easy the process is from that side as well. So it just continues to build trust with customers. And there's nothing that means more to me and this business than gaining and keeping listener and customer trust. So sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/newsworthy, all lowercase. So go to shopify.com/newsworthy right now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/newsworthy. Now back to the news. Southwest Airlines has decided to end its more than 50-year tradition of open seating. Yep, it's going to start assigning passenger seats on all flights, just like all the other big airlines. And that's a big change from the current system that assigns people a boarding group, but once they get on board, they can choose any seat that's available. The airline says it's been running tests and surveying passengers, and it apparently found the vast majority of them want to know where they're sitting before they get to the airport. So it's replacing its longstanding boarding process, though Southwest did not say exactly when. Along with that change, though, Southwest plans to convert about a third of its seats to premium seating with more legroom, and that will cost more. And in another first for Southwest, the airline's newest schedule will include a few red-eye flights. Those will start in February on certain nonstop routes, and more routes will be added over time. The company behind ChatGPT has now unveiled SearchGPT. It's a search engine that's expected to put the artificial intelligence company in direct competition with Google. SearchGPT starts with a text box that asks, "What are you looking for?" And instead of responding with a plain list of links, SearchGPT tries to organize and make sense of them. OpenAI showed off one example in which the search engine explains when to plant tomatoes before breaking down different varieties of the plant. After the results appear, you can ask follow-up questions or click the sidebar to open other relevant links. For now, SearchGPT is just a prototype, so it's only accessible to 10,000 test users. If you want to try it out, though, you can join a waitlist on OpenAI's website. More Hollywood performers are going on strike today over artificial intelligence. This time, it's thousands of video game voice actors and motion capture performers who are walking off the job. For months now, their union, SAG-AFTRA, has been negotiating with major video game companies like Activision Productions, Electronic Arts, Epic Games, Disney, Warner Brothers, and more. SAG says it won't let companies, quote, abuse AI to the detriment of our members. But video game producers say they've already agreed to historic wage increases, safety provisions, and meaningful AI protections. So they're disappointed performers have decided to strike. Normally, this strike would mean all advertising would have to stop, but the union is still allowing games to be promoted at Comic-Con this weekend. Disney and Pixar's latest hit, Inside Out 2, is now the highest-grossing animated movie of all time. This week, it surpassed Disney's Frozen 2 by hitting about $1.5 billion in global ticket sales. And its box office haul will continue to grow since there are still some markets where the movie hasn't even debuted yet. When you look beyond just animated movies, though, Inside Out 2 is now the 13th highest-grossing film of all time. It does still have a ways to go before catching up with the movie at the top of that list. Avatar made almost $3 billion at the box office. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Feel Good Friday, where we bring you one extra feel-good or positive news story before the weekend. But first, thanks to our sponsor, SKIMS. After a hectic or long day, I want to put on loungewear that makes me feel great. And honestly, the same old t-shirt and sweatpants or shorts just have not been cutting it anymore. Enter my SKIMS Soft Lounge Sleep Set. If you haven't gotten on the matching pajama set train yet, this is your sign, because it makes you feel like $1,000,000, even when you're around the house. And just like everything else I've tried from SKIMS, the fabric is incredible. So soft, so comfortable, and super high quality. I also got the Soft Lounge long slip dress, and it is truly the simplest way to feel put together and confident. I just throw it on and go, and yet I feel like I've spent all day getting ready. And of course, once again, the fabric is soft and comfortable. I'm always impressed with the feel and fit of everything I've gotten from SKIMS, and that is so true of the Soft Lounge collection as well. So you've got to shop the SKIMS Soft Lounge collection at skims.com, now available in sizes extra, extra small to 4X. If you haven't yet, be sure to let them know I sent you. After you place your order, select The Newsworthy in the survey and select my show in the drop-down menu that follows. Okay, now back to Feel Good Friday. So it turns out there's a pretty big market for pets who use curse words, or at least that's the case for one foul-mouthed parrot named Pepper. It was only a few days after an animal shelter in New York took him in that a volunteer noticed his R-rated language. He asked, quote, "Do you want me to kick your..." And you can probably guess what word came next. So the shelter's director figured she would be honest when looking for potential adopters, writing on Facebook, "If you think Pepper's feathers are colorful, you should hear his language." Well, people from all over the world flooded the Facebook post with comments, and more than 400 applications poured in from all over the country. The staff spent weeks studying the applications before eventually picking a special education teacher and her fiancé, who actually have another cursing bird at home already. Now the new owners have started an Instagram page called 2 Spicy Parrots, where they show off some of the bird's exploits. And they're hoping to hear some lively conversations between them soon. If you want to keep up with them, we have links posted in today's episode notes. All right, we'll be back tomorrow with our special edition Saturday episode, explaining what happens next after President Biden's historic decision to drop out of the 2024 race for the White House. From the basics, like what exactly is a delegate anyway, to the more complex, like why Dems are holding a virtual vote this year, and how Republicans might try to keep Vice President Harris off the ballot. Then we have all the news you need to start the week on Monday. For now, thank you so much for listening and have a great weekend.